What I got here is the cheapest full-frame mirrorless camera from Canon, the RP. Is this a camera still worth buying in 2023? How does it compare to the EOS R? Which one of them is better for you as an aspiring professional photographer or even a beginner hobbyist photographer? These are some of the questions we will try to answer in this video. What's up guys, I hope you're having a great day. If this is your first time on this channel, welcome. My name is Julian Skurani. I do a lot of tutorials, travel videos, vlogs, gear reviews, so if you're into that kind of stuff, consider subscribing. I've been using the Canon EOS R for over a year now, and I've already reviewed it on this channel as well, but some of you kept asking whether you should buy the Canon EOS R or the RP in 2023 and whether it is worth upgrading from the RP to the EOS R in 2023. Now fortunately I know a guy who shoots with the RP, so I reached out to him through Instagram and I asked whether we could swipe cameras for a couple of days or a week. He was kind enough to agree to swipe cameras, and so I'm very thankful for it. I'll put his link down below so that you can go and check his profile out, his Instagram profile out for yourselves. The very first thing I wanted to talk about was the physical aspect, the design and the build quality of this camera. The EOS RP weighs 485 grams with the battery and memory card included, and that is 175 grams lighter than the Canon EOS R. It is also smaller than the EOS R, it's not as tall, and also the grip is not as deep. So if you have big hands, then you might struggle a little bit with this camera. It might not fit in your hands as well as the EOS R does, but still I don't think that is the end of the world, and you can do away with it. There's also an extension grip that makes it taller so that your pinky finger doesn't have to hang in the air when you're holding the camera. The LCD screen and the viewfinder of the RP are also lower quality. For me personally, I barely use the viewfinder myself, so I didn't really care about it, and I didn't notice the difference, to be honest. And also the screen that I use all the time on the EOS R, it's supposed to be almost double the quality of the RP, but I still didn't have any problem with that at all. So from real world practice, I don't think that difference matters that much. Another physical difference on the body is that the EOS R has a top screen, while the RP has a dial to switch between shooting modes. I'm used to the screen on my EOS R because it shows me lots of information like the aperture, ISO, shutter speed, the battery level and what mode I'm shooting in. All of that, for example, if I'm shooting in this position, I can see everything from the top. I don't need to look at my camera or turn it in any way, so I'm used to it and I like that actually. But at the same time, the dial helps you switch between modes faster than the EOS R, which some people might find better. So I don't think that's really a decisive factor when it comes to choosing one camera over the other, because you could get used to both the systems. Another thing is that the buttons and dials feel a bit more premium on the EOS R. When you press a button, it has more depth into it, and also the dials are a bit stronger when it comes to moving them. But having said that, the RP's buttons also feel like they are good quality, so I wouldn't really say that they feel cheap or something. It's just that the EOS R's buttons and dials feel just a bit more premium. Both of these cameras use articulating screens, so you won't have any trouble shooting from up here or down below. You will always be able to see what you're pointing at. And also if you're into YouTube or vlogging or that kind of stuff, you can always flip the screen and see how you're framing yourself. So in this case, it's a tie. When it comes to the ports, they're almost identical actually. They both have a remote jack, a microphone jack, a headphone jack, an HDMI port, and also a USB-C port which can be used to charge the camera or transfer data. The only difference is that the RP's USB-C port only supports up to USB 2.0 data transfer speeds, while the EOS R's USB-C port supports up to USB 3.1 data transfer speeds. So the EOS R can transfer files to your computer faster than the RP can. Batteries are also an important point when it comes to choosing one camera over the other, because the EOS R uses the LPE6N battery, which lasts a lot longer and it's rated at 370 shots, while the RP uses the LPE17 battery, which is a lot smaller and is only rated up to 250 shots. In real world scenarios, for example for street photography, I would calculate with double that number on both cameras, and sometimes even more than double on the EOS R. So the EOS R's battery is better, but not only for this, it is also strategically better, because if you are planning to upgrade the body again in 2 to 3 years, then you can go to the R6 or the R5 or the R6 Mark II, and they also use the same batteries as the EOS R, so you won't need to buy extra batteries for them. And that's not the case with the RP. You need to invest on batteries again. And the EOS R's batteries aren't particularly cheap because they cost about 100 euros a piece. Both cameras have only one SD card slot. The EOS R's slot you can access from the side, while the RP's from the same port as the battery. When it comes to the sensors, they both use a full frame sensor, which is what I love about these two cameras. The EOS R uses a 30.3 megapixel sensor, while the RP uses a 26 megapixel sensor. So if resolution is all you're after, then the EOS R is the winner, but the RP is not that far behind, so the resolution alone shouldn't be a deciding factor in my opinion. And now let's come to some things which have a higher potential of being a deal breaker when it comes to choosing the RP over the EOS R. Coffee break. I went for a photo walk some days ago with the RP, and you can click right here to see that POV video of that photo walk and all the photos that I took there. But one thing that I noticed, like, that was a huge difference between the two cameras, was the difference in dynamic range. I had kind of a revelation about how for granted I take it that on the EOS R I can recuperate the sky on pretty much any occasion, but on the RP it was so difficult. I had to choose between the shadows or the sky, because when I tried to get them both recuperated, like, I just couldn't do it. And that also made me wonder how much I'm actually missing when I know that the R6 and the R5 both have even better dynamic range than the EOS R. Speaking in technical terms, the EOS R has 13.5 stops of dynamic range, while the RP has the 11.9 stops. That should really matter to you if you're planning to use the camera to take photos in which you're gonna have very dark parts and very bright parts in the same photo. For example, if you shoot landscape photography, you should pass on the RP and go straight to the R, because in my opinion the dynamic range of the RP is gonna be a deal breaker in your case. Also, one thing that I noticed was that the photos on the EOS RP come out too digital, way more than the EOS R at least. I noticed that they come with too much contrast and also maybe a bit too much clarity. Because I noticed if I could take the contrast slider a bit down and the clarity a bit down, then I could give it a more pleasing look, but it's still not quite there as the EOS R, and I personally prefer that look much more than the RP. All of that being said though, I also went a couple of nights ago to do some club photography using a flash, and in that case the photos that I took out of that photography session from the EOS RP were really, I couldn't tell the difference from the ones that I've taken on the EOS R before. So you can definitely use it professionally when it comes to that kind of photography. The second thing that might be a deal breaker when it comes to choosing the RP over the EOS R is the autofocus. And I actually noticed that immediately on the first time when I went for the photo walk. I'm talking specifically about the fact that the RP cannot focus very well when the images get a bit dark. When I researched to know the technical difference in this regard, I saw that the EOS R can focus down to -6 EV, while the RP only down to -5 EV. So when the images get dark, the EOS R's autofocus system can tolerate one more stop of light than the RP can, and trust me, that difference was noticeable. Another thing that you don't get when it comes to the autofocus is that on the RP you don't get the dual pixel autofocus system when you want to shoot 4K video. That being said, the 4K is cropped in both cameras, and I personally don't shoot in 4K usually, but there is a big difference if you're planning to when it comes to the autofocus system, so that could be a deal breaker for you. Also, you get 4K 30 frames per second on the EOS R, and you don't get that on the RP. I barely shoot 30 frames per second myself, but the difference is there. Two more big differences when it comes to shooting video are that on the EOS R you can shoot log, while on the RP you don't get that option at all. And that might be a real deal breaker for some of you out there who want to at least try out log and start learning about it. On the RP you don't get that at all. And you also get the option to shoot in 10 bit when you record your footage externally on the EOS R, while on the RP you only have 8-bit option. Another aspect when it comes to the difference between the EOS R and the RP is the continuous shooting. On the EOS R you can shoot up to 8 frames per second, while on the RP only 5 frames per second. The difference is not that much when you shoot on focus tracking mode with 5 frames per second on the EOS R versus 4 frames per second on the RP, but that 1 frame is still there. So if you're looking to capture slightly faster moving objects, the EOS R is a better option. So now that we've talked pretty much about anything important that you could mention on the RP, especially in comparison to the EOS R, let's try to come to some sort of conclusions. But before we go to that, I also want to mention, in case it wasn't clear already, that I am filming this whole video on the EOS RP. So if you need it for this kind of content, then you have all this material to look at it yourself and to see whether it works for you. Now, is the Canon RP a camera that you should buy in 2023? Let's start with this. If you're planning to use the camera professionally and you're trying to decide between the EOS R and the RP, I would skip the RP and go straight to the EOS R. Just because it has a better sensor and it's gonna last you longer before you decide that you want to change the camera again. To be honest, in 2023 I don't think you should go for the RP at all. Simply because if you have planned to spend around 1,200 euros on a camera body, I think it is much better invested if you search for a used EOS R instead. And the EOS R is probably the best camera that you can find at that price in 2023, because you can use it as a hobbyist and you'll get really good results. But also in the future, if you're planning to jump and start doing content for clients, you can still use that camera for photos. Of course, not a topic at all, but even for videos, because you get things like log and 4K with autofocus. So I think that's a win-win. Well, who should get the RP then? I think only if you have about 600 to 700 euros dedicated for a camera body and you are a hobby photographer who is not planning to shoot any professional work very soon, then I think you should go with the RP. And if you were planning to spend 1,200 on the RP, maybe it's better to spend 600 to 700 and then save the rest for getting good lenses. Because I don't know if you've heard this saying before, but in the camera world we say date the body, marry the lens. Because the lenses will be something that you will use even once you change bodies, and they will be with you for a longer amount of time. So it's better to go for good quality lenses and spend some more on glass than on camera body. And getting these cameras used, the EOS R and the RP, is also a good investment strategy. Because if you decide to resell it in like 5 or 6 months, then you won't end up losing a lot of money or any money at all. But if you buy them new and you want to sell them like 6 months from now, then you will lose, I don't know, 800 euros immediately. Alright guys, so that was it with this video. Let me know in the comments below if you agree with my verdict and if this video was any helpful to you at all. Which is what I hope, because that's the reason why I spend so much time getting these videos out there, to hopefully be helpful to some of you. But if it was helpful and you don't want to miss any videos like this in the future, then make sure to subscribe to the channel and leave a thumbs up to this video as well. Peace.